So you think it's time to buy a house? Let's talk about all it takes to buy a house. Well, down payment is super important. And even though there's all sorts of down payment assistance programs out there, at the end of the day, you're going to need money. Now, it depends on what kind of loan you're getting. An FHA loan, 3.5% down. A VA loan, 0 down. If you're doing conventional and you don't want any type of PMI, private mortgage insurance, you need 20% down. There's all sorts of loans out there depending on what kind of money you need down. But most of my buyers need about $8,000 to $10,000. It typically helps you get across the finish line. So this down payment money is very, very important. You might have heard DTI. What is that? That is debt to income ratio. Well, what's a ratio? Well, it's a percentage. So how much money do you owe every month versus how much money you have left over? Most of our mortgages want you to have at least 60% left over, 40% debt to income ratio, which means that you have enough money to make the house payment every single month. That is super important. Credit score is so super important when you're buying a house. And the reason being is depending on your score, depends on your interest rate. And as you know, you definitely want your interest rate lower. So it's funny, when my kids were first starting out being adults, or I guess even when I started being an adult, I didn't even have a credit score. You can literally have a 0 credit score if you don't have any type of credit. Well, as you build your credit, you get a credit card, you buy a car, you buy whatever, it builds your credit score. Very important not to be late on those payments, and very important not to close out any accounts, because longevity, history is super important in discovering what your credit score actually is. Now, anybody with a 740 or more, you're golden. You get the best interest rates, the best credit score, the best everything, right? And then, but there's other programs that will help you even if your credit score is not correct. And as we've talked about before in the past, if you have a credit score on Credit Karma of 560, when they go to pull your credit score for buying a house, it could be 680. You just don't know. So this is why it's super important to talk to a lender. Closing costs. Closing costs are different than your down payment. Closing costs consist of things like origination fee that your lender charges, your homeowner's insurance, your taxes. These things are actually paid at the closing table as part of your closing cost package, which includes your down payment, but is not included in that down payment number we've talked about. So be prepared, ask your lender, what are my closing costs and down payment? Those together make for a much better answer. Emergency fund. Well, if you were a Ramsey fan, you would know you need an emergency fund. Emergency funds consist of 6 months, typically, of back pay. So if you were to lay off or got sick or what have you, you would have 6 months of money in the bank to make sure you can make your payments. Well, that is going to be super important to a lender. They're going to like you better if you have a good emergency fund. Job security. You know, all my years growing up, my dad was a subcontractor for NASA. Well, we never knew from contract to contract if he was going to have a job the next time around. That is very typical here in Titusville. That's what we do. We just work contract work. And I also understand up north, same thing. If you work in the mines, if you work in a factory, it could be contract work. So it's very important to know that you have job security before you start looking for a mortgage. The reason being is your lender's going to be looking at that. They want you to have 2 years of income, consistent employment for a 2-year period. That does not mean the same job for 2 years, but possibly the same field, and also possibly making sure you're getting raises as you go on, that you're not going backwards in your salary. Job security is huge. Long-term intent. Well, what does that mean, Edna? Well, long-term intent, what are your plans for the future? Most people stay in the house 5 to 7 years. If you plan on moving in 6 months, buying is not best for you. You definitely want to look at, what are my plans? And now plans change from time to time, but for the most part, if you are settling in and this is where you know you want to be, that's possibly when it's time to buy a house. Lifestyle consideration. That's another great one. So we want to consider what your lifestyle looks like. If you have elderly parents who are looking to move into with you, you might want a mother-in-law suite. If you're just starting out but you don't have any children yet and one day you want children, you might consider a 4-bedroom house. If you want to start a farm, you might consider acreage. If you want to be close to walking to the brewery, you might want to consider a condo downtown. These are all the different things we consider when we're looking at what does your lifestyle consist of. I once had a customer call me. It was the funniest call. He literally said, I don't care where I live, I got to be in walking distance to a bar. No joke. So I literally mapped out a quarter mile from the local bars to find apartment complexes for him. It was hysterical, but the truth was he knew himself and he knew he wanted to walk home after drinking. Commitment. What a hard word, right? We don't like that word in America, but the truth is when you buy a house, it's a commitment. It's a commitment to mowing the lawn. It's a commitment to fixing things. It's a commitment to making your payment. It could even be a commitment to your insurance policy. And I know that sounds weird, but right now in today's market, the insurance industry is kind of all over the map. And they are requiring you to do certain things to keep your house at a certain level to get a certain insurance policy, right? So you had to be committed to making sure that you can make those repairs. Commitment is a big part of buying a house. Resale value. We definitely want to look for kind of deals in this market right now. We have no magic ball that tells us what the future is going to be. So we want to make sure that we're looking at what is it future-wise. Does this house have resellability, right? I look at bathrooms that might be original or kitchens that are outdated. If I'm not willing to do those updates, it might not be resellable because those are things people look at. So look at resellability when you're looking at homes. Ongoing costs. So I heard a financial advisor once say that buying a house, that is the least you will pay every month for that house. Renting a house is the most you'll pay every month. So if you look at that payment for buying a house and it's like, I can't get a pizza delivered because this is too tight for me, you don't need to be buying a house. That payment's too tight because that's the minimum you're going to pay every month for that house. And that's the difference between looking at the ongoing cost of that house because insurance does go up, taxes go up, all those things go up every month, but with rent, they stay the same. Well, my name is Edna Wilson, and there's a scoop on how to buy a house. There's many things to consider in buying a house, and I know it can be very overwhelming. So make sure you call your local professional, me, to ask any questions you have about buying a house. Have a great day.